you're not living on the edge a bit, you're not living. If something you do doesn't scare you a bit, then you're not growing. I call it the comfort rut. We fall into that rut and we don't get out of it.
Welcome to the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I'm your host, Kavita, and the founder of Power Purpose Play, a global community of women in midlife. I'm here to tell you that it's your time now to rediscover what has always been inside of you and bring that out into the world. If you're wondering what's next, but don't know quite what that is, or if you feel a twinge in your heart telling you that you have so much more to do and so much more to offer, you're in the right place. Ask yourself, if not now, when? Do you want to leave your job, start your own business, take control of your health, reignite the passion in your marriage, write that book, or at least that first chapter? Transitions like this can be daunting, but through listening to my story and interviews with incredible women every week, I hope to inspire you to take action. I rediscovered myself after the age of 50, and I know you can too. It's my time now to help you do just that. I'm so excited you're here. Let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I'm your host, Kavita Ahuja, and the founder of Power Purpose Play. We are a global platform amplifying the personal growth and inner power of women in midlife. Our goal is really to help you rediscover yourself as you move forward in the next chapter of your life. To that end, I interview incredible women every week who will serve as inspiration for you to take that little twinge in your heart and act upon it. My guest this week knows a thing or two about living a life with no regrets. Through her many different life experiences, Patti Pokorchuk will, I'm sure, inspire you to take action with curiosity and courage. Patti was not born a sales professional. She was the shyest female tech pioneer, proving that anyone can learn how to sell and love it too. Patti now teaches entrepreneurial sales at Ryerson University in Toronto, Canada. A serial entrepreneur since 1992, she helped co-found and run a software business, scaling to multiple seven figures in sales before opening up her own hobby farm and garden center, despite not knowing anything about farming. At the age of 25, Patti decided to start living a life with no regrets, turned her back on a promising career at IBM, and took a one-way ticket to Europe for a year, which ended up being 9 years. Her adventures as a serial entrepreneur and living a life of experiences are in her book, The Accidental Farmer. And I'm so pleased to have you on the show today, Patti. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me on your show, Kavita. Looking forward to an interesting discussion.
Yes, me as well. Patti, when you had first introduced yourself to me, you mentioned that you once had branded your company called the Reinvention Rebel. And I think that's why you were attracted to midlife reinvention. So tell us a little bit about that and your story and how did you get to where you are now and what are you doing today? It's a lot, but maybe if you can sum it up a little for us.
Well, I once went to one of those executive job assessment interviews and it was like half a day.
Yeah.
Apparently, and I was in my early 30s, I scored off the chart for rebelliousness. And I also, when I was 14, I was sent away to a boarding school and they kicked me out 3 times when I was 14. And that's sort of my roots in rebelliousness. It's just, I don't know, I'm the only Patti Pokorchuk in the world and I'm left-handed. I don't know, that just makes me just not fit in. But part of my journey is sort of serendipity. I was good with numbers, went to Ryerson to be an accountant, literally played with a computer and changed my major, changed my life. But I went from being an employee to working at many startups to doing many startups of my own. Tech to farming is not a natural, normal progression.
I don't. Yeah, we have to explore that a little bit.
Right. And actually, when I was testing book titles and things, I might identify as a rebel, but it didn't test well. So that's why the book was called The Accidental Farmer, not the Reinvention Rebel. Mm-hmm. But it was close just because it didn't test as well. But I guess what also attracted me is at the age of 55, after my period of temporary insanity as a farmer and as a married woman, I was at a loss. So I was 55. And finally, that 1 year in Europe, I call it the 30-year detour. I came back to Toronto, but I had nothing. No self-esteem, no business, no connections, nothing. And I was like, what are you going to be when you grow up?
Wow. At 55.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then what did you do?
I started some companies. I thought I'll try. I'd been a marketing consultant I'd spent 20 years in Ottawa and in the outskirts of Ottawa, but whatever you did in Eastern Ontario, it didn't commute. It didn't matter here in Toronto, in the big six. So I just restarted what I wanted to find my purpose and passion for the rest of my life. And so I started 2 businesses. One was a marketing, speakers bureau, speakers agent. I did that for a year. What doesn't light me up? I want to be the speaker. Started my marketing consulting. It just kept going. And then finally, 7 years ago, almost 8 years, somebody hired me as a sales coach. And I went, seriously? Me? No, really. And I have found my purpose and place in life. Finally.
Fantastic. That's amazing that you were able to do that. It seems as though from kind of experimenting with many different things, right? And
it was a determination not to settle. I still remember back in my student days, I worked at an insurance agency who wanted to keep me on, said, don't finish school, just stay here. And it was the most boring job of my life.
Right.
And I stuck it through because I said I would spend the summer. And I just said, no more. If I don't really enjoy something, let's stop doing it.
Right.
Stop doing it.
Interesting. So that's kind of leads into what I think what I really wanted to get at is, as women in midlife, and the platform that I've created here, it's all about encouraging women to go after their dreams and what they want to do and finding what it is that really calls them. And so with all these different things that you've done in your life, how did you find that courage? Because courage is something that it takes courage to do all these things, like become a farmer and open a garden center. What would you recommend for women who are thinking, oh, I want to make a change. I don't know how. I'm afraid. What are some of the tips that you would have based on your experience?
Yeah, I know we'll get more into my traumatic, abusive background. You have to understand that I was practically mute until I was 20 and left home. I was seriously shy, but I was pretty much mute at home, definitely. I had no courage. I was scared of my shadow until my 50s, mid-50s. I hid it well. So it's not courage, but it was the fear of regrets. So my fear of regrets was bigger than my lack of courage, right? So it's like I had this choice at 25. I had this perfect life, a career in IBM, stockbroker boyfriend, sports car, blah, blah, blah. But I wasn't happy on the inside.
Right.
I had a choice. I could either settle for that, the 2.2 kids, and happy. And I'm like, oh. So what I say now, because the purpose of your show and what you do is the same with, I want people, what I do in my coaching is like, where do you want to take your company? Who do you want to work with? Because no use working with people that you don't like. If you're in it just for the money, it sucks.
Yes.
Life out of you. It doesn't make you get out of bed. And so what I say to people is, okay, fast forward your life to 90, 95. And I always envision this as you're on a porch, on a rocking chair with your BFF. And you're talking about the woulda, coulda, shouldas. At 95, you're usually physically too old to go climb that mountain, to go on that adventure, to go live overseas somewhere. But your regrets at that age are your dreams for today. And it doesn't matter what age, whether it's 65 or 25. And I was just lucky that my fear of regretting not going on that one-way journey solo by myself to Europe for a year was, I knew this was familiar. And I now go, you're not living on the edge a bit, you're not living. If something you do doesn't scare you a bit, then you're not growing.
Yeah. Because
you have to be in that, I call it the comfort rut. We fall into that rut and we don't get out of it. And I don't have a comfort zone. I really don't. I just don't. but the thing is what I found is it was a big decision to leave everything behind and go on one way. I went through communist countries where I was 26 and I met somebody who my same age in Hungary, and he didn't have the same freedom because they were communist and I was Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
That was a real life lesson. That was the start of my sort of gratitude journal. I was so lucky because I'm a first generation Canadian of German Ukrainian heritage. So my dad was a Russian army deserter. I went to more communist countries and saw the difference of what it was like. I mean, Hungary was very different from Romania. I mean, it was just it was really different. And so making that decision was huge. But after the year was over and I was running out of money, and I was like, okay, I could go back to the boyfriend who was waiting for me patiently my old life. But it was like, I know that.
Yes.
I had gotten friends of friends in Munich, and I'm half German. I picked up the language relatively easily. And I thought, well, let's just stay another year. So once you make a huge life decision, the next one is a lot easier. It's like getting married, then having kids or buying a house. It's easier. Once you hit the big decisions, it just gets easier and easier. I mean, then that's why it ended up being 9 years. I got my first job. I got my foot in the door, and I got headhunted to the next job, and then I got headhunted to the next job, and then enough of Germany. Still not ready to go home after 4 years. So I went to England, okay? So my boyfriend was in Geneva. So I guess that was a telling point about our relationship, that I didn't want to move to Switzerland with him. So yeah, it just got easier and easier. One thing that's not on my resume is being an illegal immigrant for a while, but that's not it's just, amazing what you can do with.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. A couple of things that you mentioned that really stood out for me is when you went to these communist countries, and then you realize, I think we sometimes don't realize how fortunate we are to live in the society we are, because of the freedoms that we have. And when you see people who don't have those freedoms, it makes us feel more, like you said, gratitude to what we have. And so we have those freedoms, and sometimes we put the limitations on ourselves.
Oh, totally. Totally. I mean, when we talk about first world problems, it's just go to Togo, Africa, and go to a hospital there.
Yes. Right.
My sister ended up living there, and long story, I got my index finger caught in the molars of her dog's teeth, grinding teeth. And I had to go to a bush hospital, basically. So yeah, don't take your healthcare for granted, because it's a little different.
Well, don't take anything for granted. I mean, I'm thinking about what's happening in Afghanistan right now and it's just, anyway, that kind of popped into my head when you talked about that is the freedoms that we have. And then the other thing you said is that the hardest decision is the first decision you make, and then it gets easier from there, right? So it's really that first step that you take. And I find that too in my life is like when you overthink things, and then it's like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And then once you take that first leap, I don't know, it all kind of follows.
One of my things is like, just take that first step.
Yeah.
And then figure out what your second step is, whether it's backwards or sideways or diagonally, or is it the cha-cha, the tango, the rumba, who cares? But that first step, right?
As long as you're dancing through life, right?
Yeah, exactly. Always better.
Fantastic. That's great. That's really some really great advice. I find that you also, when I speak to you, you're so energetic, and you have a lot of positive energy, which I love. So, and I'm sure you can hear it on the podcast, but even if you come on the YouTube and see your face, you're just smiling all the time, which is wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah. But it's one of my things is when my happy outside matches my happy inside, that's true happiness. For most of my life, that was a facade. And
tell me about that.
Yeah. When your mother abuses you, you grow up thinking that's normal. I was an accident, like typical a boomer kid. I was an accident. I'm 14 months after my brother, and I was not wanted. And they say now that fetuses know what's going on. My mother ran up and down the street saying, I'm pregnant. I don't want this kid. I don't want this kid. I don't want.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah. My dad confirmed it. And when you asked about my trauma and abuse, is that was the way so she abused me from pre-birth to really 5 years ago.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But having gone through that and having had enough therapy, when they say about unpeeling the layers of the onion, well, I was a giant pumpkin, right? So, I mean, I've had a lot of layers to go through. And that's why I'm so happy, because I have taken a luggage store worth of baggage and unpacked it and dealt with it. And once you, in my case, stop living like you're on eggshells, because I didn't know I was abused until I was 47. Because I married my mother, an emotional, bullying, low self-esteem individual. And I was the middle child, right? I'm the people pleaser. So it was just the way I was brought up. And I know I'm smart. And that's why I like to talk about, she was undiagnosed bipolar, but she grew up in the war, and we just had a mean streak that, she's narcissistic, basically. It's all about her and how I could make her look good. And my needs were not important. So it was really 2011, so 10 years ago, when I was at a women's event and I met a psychiatrist. And then I met somebody who was a therapist. And that's like, is the universe giving you signals? And the second lady, Andrea Wynn, she was amazing. So I told her sort of some of my story, and great loss. When you think life can't get worse, and divorce is horrible, even when it's amicable. When you think life can't get worse, then my father passed away unexpectedly. And some other deaths. And I wasn't really coping with it. So Andrea said, well, how are you staying grounded during this time of turmoil? I went, I'm not. I'm not. So she was my advisor, therapist, or counselor for 6 months, and started telling me about self-love and coaching me on love yourself first and everything flows. And the phrase that stuck to me was, what anyone else thinks of me is none of my business. What I think of myself is the number one. So
that's beautiful.
Not parents, not friends, not anybody, not even your spouse, is what I think of myself. And that was kind of the aha moment.
Yeah.
And I just encourage, not everybody has as much trauma in there, but everybody has some kind of trauma. And I encourage talking about it, getting professional help. I have friends who are in their 50s and 60s, and they're still keeping their baggage firmly packed beside themselves. And it's like, you haven't solved it by now by yourself. You won't. So it takes, again, courage and a determination. I was always known as persistent Patty. Is a good trait in sales. And that was one of my few traits I had.
Yes.
If you really, 20 years ago, I thought I was broken and I'd never be fixed. And now I consider myself healed and whole. And I don't care what you think about it.
Thank you for sharing that. I know that to talk about our traumas and things that happen to us is very difficult. And for you to share that, I applaud you and thank you very much for sharing what you've gone through. Because when we share what we've gone through and our obstacles that are in our way, then it's for other people to learn from. And what you just shared is really important, especially when it comes to mental health. And what you said about loving yourself, I think that's such a key fundamental thing. And then asking for help, right? And oftentimes people don't do that. And from your experience, it seems as though that has helped you along the path.
But you have to also let down your defenses. I had this when I was 21 and I was taking Psychology 101. And I thought, oh my God, I have this forward vision at 40. I'm going to make some shrinks day and come up and say, hey, okay, do me. And sure enough, I was 40, having marital issues with my partner. And that's sort of the first therapist I had. And it's just like, and you have a therapist for certain reasons too. And it's just like, even last year, I had to get over the residual guilt and anger with my, you don't want to know what I call her now, but my birth mom. And so she helped me. It was 11 sessions because they're tax deductible. That's why I know. But she helped me get over that. Everybody has parental guilt or sibling guilt or some kind of guilt and anger. And it's why I just wanted to get rid of it. So it's just never giving up to keep getting to a place of happiness and peace. I think that's the most important part. feeling peace.
And you mentioned peeling the onion, and it's not something that happens overnight. It takes a long time, but once you get on the path of peeling that onion and then finding what's in the core of your heart and what's in the core of your soul, right? And what makes you tick and what you said, self-love and self-care, all those things are so important.
Yeah, especially a lot of your audience, they're moms and they're caretakers, they're in the sandwich generation, and they think it's selfish to look after it, but their needs are very important. It's good to set an example for their children, especially for, their daughters, that they're important.
Yeah, I have a course coming up called "It's My Time Now," and it's not being selfish. It's really understanding what it is that's in your core and what you really want to bring out into the world, and because we're all unique. And so that's really a great example of how you kind of overcome or at least faced some of the obstacles in your life.
Yeah, it's learning. I mean, you can do it on your own, perhaps. I remember a friend of mine who had an abusive dad, and she watched the Waltons at 16 and went, "My family's not like that. I'm not abused." She was more mature and different thing, and I'm a bit of a late bloomer, but I have bloomed.
Oh, you certainly have. Tell us a little bit about your career, Anya. You started out, and I mentioned in the bio that when I introduced you, that you started out at IBM. So that's a very kind of male-dominated industry. Yeah. And how did that happen? Like, how did you cope with that? And do you think that there's been a change or shift in the perception of male versus female in the workforce? And that's our whole thing with Power Purpose Play is we want women to really come into their internal power. And so how did you face this industry of really male-dominated industry? What did you do?
God. And you have to understand, I am 5'2". I was 5'2", and now I'm at 1.5, I guess, because I shrunk with age. I used to wear higher heels. I do not, I am not an imposing figure at all. And I'm sort of, even then I was cute and bouncy, right? And nice. I was always nice. So I never tried to imitate men, except I didn't have feelings. I was not a female in that respect. I didn't business school in the 70s and 80s, no feelings, right? So I depressed or repressed all my feelings till I was 40 at the shrink's office. And it was I just did a good job. I made sure I was like the typical woman, 110%, 120% competent. And I don't know, I was always a tomboy when I was a kid. So anything my brother could do, I could do. Standing up was a disaster, but he's standing up. Why couldn't I? But I tried it. It didn't work. So, but I always had this, if he could do it, so could I. And I don't know why I never had, I'm a girl, I can't do that. So part of it was just an attitude. And the challenge wasn't so much in Canada. So when I went to Germany, where literally in technology, there were 3 women in the whole industry of Germany. And not only was I female, I was foreign. And I was beginner German. Yeah. And I was the job, had a startup position as the sales rep for this company. And I just blabbed my blood. I just got through. and I just wanted, after that year of travel, I just wanted to stay in Munich and experience life living and working in Europe. So I didn't really care. As long as I made enough money to pay my rent, I had a company car, and I could live and spend all my money fine. So then I got headhunted to my next job, believe it or not, for my lack of English, but that's another story. I know. I so immersed myself in German that I couldn't speak English properly. As the American president, who I was supposed to impress with my fluidness in English. Anyways, he was so impressed that I couldn't speak English anymore that he wanted me for his company. And I more than doubled my salary going there. And then after a year and a half there, I was headhunted to my 3rd job in Germany. By then I quadrupled my salary to 6 figures. And I was making as much as dentists and doctors back then. I always think if I could do that as a foreign female, literally one of 3, then this glass ceiling, I experienced gender discrimination where somebody's looking at you and going, isn't there a man I could talk to? It's like,
oh, really? Okay.
No, repeatedly. It was that blatant. And it would be women saying, which man are you calling for? And it's like, oh, the steam would just roll off. As I learned, the bad news in Germany is I had to change my personality in order to be successful. That's why I spent 4 years and went, okay, enough of that. So I think it's, so part of it is just, being being abused is I could have been a victim, and I could have had the depression and the multiple physical ailments. Like mind and body are very connected. I'm in amazing good health for my age. And I was always a victor. I mean, that was the thing with the abuse, is that because I was always trying to make my mom proud of me, I became a super overachiever. But part of it was just like, I always call it the immigrant work ethic. I was paid to do a job, even though it terrified me to be in sales. I just did it. Did it. And part of it's just doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned earlier, like that you worked 120% because you felt that you had to with, your male counterparts. And I think that's what happens, is that sometimes women feel like they have to overwork or be over accomplished. Men can do it at maybe 80% and they're recognized, whereas women have to do it 120% to feel that they're recognized. But I'm hoping that's changing slowly.
I think whatever gen it is that they're in their 20s, millennials, they don't see gender as much of an issue as the boomer up crowd.
Yeah.
But one thing is, one of my first life lessons was life's not fair. Life isn't fair. We aren't all equal.
Right.
This whole renaming universities, renaming streets, is that you can find some dirt in everyone's background, right? Yes. And life's just not fair. That was my first.
I love what you said. You said you could have been a victim, but you were a victor. I really like that. That's really such a powerful statement, in that you could have let life and these obstacles and the male-dominated industry that you're in hold you back, but you became a victor, and that's wonderful.
It's up here, right? It's just like growing up as a tomboy. It's like, men can do it, I can do it. Like I never saw the difference, right? It was. I'm not transgendered or any of that thing. It's strictly a cis woman. But it was just like, and I grew up in one of the mothers stay at home till the kids were like older. Very traditional family, but I just never.
Yeah. And I also like what you said about that you changed your personality at one point, but now you're not. So I think that's so important, that oftentimes we fall into these roles and that we're not really ourselves. And to be your authentic self is so important. And when you're your authentic self, then it shows, and that almost automatically makes you successful. Hi, my friend. Kavita here. Do you often feel blocked from moving forward? We all feel that way at times. These are referred to as energy blocks. I've created a short, actionable PDF guide to help you release your negative energy blocks. Click the link in the description to download it now for free. Now, let's get back to the episode.
True. Well, I guess under the circumstances in Germany, I had to follow their rules of doing business, right? My last name in German, Pokorchak, which is difficult except for communist countries, Slavic countries. And German is, and literally you're choking. Oh. So I would say, just call me Patty. And it's like first name. Like you just don't do that, at least not back then.
Yes.
And they would call me Mrs. Patty because I had a position of some prominence and they couldn't call me my first name right after that. So it got complicated. So I used to go, Pokorchak, call me Poko. No smile.
Yeah. So Patty, you are now teaching sales to entrepreneurs and small businesses. Is that correct?
That's right.
And so you said you were a born salesperson. So how did you become that? And what are some of the concepts? I mean, some of the concepts that you teach, perhaps we can apply into our lives. Is there anything that you can share around that?
Yeah. I was going to say learning how to sell is a life skill. That's what So I teach 2 classes, about 55 students each, 110 students each year. And I teach them life skills. It's like handling objections, negotiating skills. We're all in service to help others. Whether you have a parent, a sibling, an employer, you've got colleagues that you have to get along with, you're all in sales. You're always trying to persuade people. We might not call it sales, but negotiating, persuading, influencing, those are sales skills. Whenever you want to get somebody to your point of view, and it's knowing that, again, sales starts with the mindset of sales isn't sleazy. It's a way definition of business is a fair exchange of value for money. So one thing I learned early on is being in sales is being a service to others. So my superpower is to be curious, insanely curious about people. So I ask a lot of questions, and that was the introvert, didn't like to talk. And then I'm caring. I care more about, and that's what got me out of my shyest. I care more about service, giving information to your audience. And I don't really care about bragging about what I do, because unless you can find the lessons in it. So the reason I got into sales was I was forced to learn to sell at IBM. I didn't have a choice. I wanted to make money and go live in Europe for an extended time or travel in Europe. And the fastest way to do it was in sales. And I literally made the equivalent of 150,000 age 25. So I saved 50,000 of that. And that was my ticket to Europe to buy a car and travel. And not my student. So yeah.
Those are so important. I don't know if you know, but I was in sales for my whole career as well. And those things that you said about objections, negotiating, persuasion, influencing. And I think the most important thing about that is what you said about being curious and caring. Because when I was very successful as well in my previous career in sales, and I would always think about, what is it? How can I actually help the person that's in front of me? It's not about me. You take it away from yourself, and you think about, what is it that I'm offering that can actually help that person or the person that they're serving, in this case, the patients that I was serving, and just giving the information that is authentic and real and has some maybe education, but also being very authentic. And as you said, curious and caring. Those are some great, and that can be applied to your life. Like anytime you meet somebody, it's interesting. Sometimes you'll meet people who you ask them all about themselves. Like you'll ask them, where are you from? But then there's no reciprocal questions coming your way. So they're not curious about you. Yeah. And I always found that interesting, is how can people be like that? Because I'm very interested in what people, like, obviously I am, because I talk to different women every week, right? Yeah. But I find that that's how you grow. That's how you learn.
That's right. And I mean, I know all about me. I'm bored with talking about me. Tell me about you.
Oh, exactly. That's why I loved hearing stories of women like you, right? So it's because everybody has a story. We can learn from everyone's story, and everybody interprets another person's story in a different way that can apply into their own life. And so,
right. I was being a first generation Canadian, having been like a legal immigrant, an illegal immigrant in other countries where I was treated as a guest in their country, is that there's some commonalities. I've traveled a lot, I've read an awful lot, and you just have these connections, and the world is small. You'll find something common. We're both in sales. We're both, do things, but asking questions just, makes you look
and asking questions that really interest you. It's not just like to ask questions for the sake of asking questions, right? It's like, how does that really impact?
You'll love this stories. Is that when I was 14, I was super shy, and I was reading 17 magazine, which we as girls, women all know. And it was, how to talk to boys when you're shy. And it said, smile a lot and ask questions. And who knew that was going to be my secret to success?
It all comes back, right? It's all those little breadcrumbs along the way of your life. Interesting.
I know, but optimistic salespeople outsell the pessimists by about 50%. And I always say to my clients is, if you're not your best cheerleader about what you're selling and your product or service, then why should anyone else be? And if you're not, and I love what I do, I know I help others. So how can I help you? I always see myself as the Cocker Spaniel puppy going, I'm wagging my tail.
That's wonderful. And you also wrote a book, and the book is called The Accidental Farmer, Adventures of a Serial Entrepreneur. And so you have stories and life lessons in that book. And so firstly, congratulations for writing a book. That's amazing. A lot of people want to write books, but they don't do it. So you did it. So awesome.
Thank you.
And what would some of the life lessons that you talk about in the book, maybe you can share a few of those?
Yes. And it actually starts off when I was 25, feeling like top of the world and not happy. So it does start when I'm 25 and decide to start living a life with, I'd say, few regrets. No regrets is probably impossible, but fewer regrets. And like I said, my story was like, I fast forwarded my life to like 90s and went, I don't do this, I will regret it. So I always say is dream big and then just do it.
Mm.
Don't, as you say, don't overanalyze. So I take this step on this, like don't plan. I have notoriously tried planning twice in the last 30 years. And then it's just like once was in London, I was established, had a boyfriend, bought a new flat. 6 months later, I'm back in Canada. But fast forward, I buy a house, fixer upper, 3 to 5 years. A year later, I was out. And it changed. Like it was like I never had a desire to be. So planning is not really is be a bit more spontaneous, is because you regret what you don't do, not what you have done. Usually, well, try not to regret too many one night stands. Okay. Things we do that we regret. I mean, apologize, right? Stop finding reasons not to do something and just go do it. Really the Nike slogan. You spoke earlier about the gratitude. Again, about 10 years ago, I spent a year every night writing down 5 things I was grateful for. And that gives you a new perspective on life, because you just can't say, oh, because it was a beautiful sunny day. You have to you spend your day looking for things to be grateful for.
Yes, absolutely.
You can always find things that aren't working, but I've been to Haiti, believe it or not. I've been in installation in Haiti for a week once. And probably the scariest place I've ever been.
Really?
And I was installing a barcode system. Like I wasn't even like that was my software company, was barcode systems to track assets. And we're tracking all the cell phone towers in Haiti. And I literally had Johnny with the shotgun, writing shotgun.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And my accountant who I was training, he had a handgun. And we went, those cell phone towers you see in the middle, pretty open. In Haiti, they're 24/7 manned by two armed guards. They're 12-foot fortresses, with barbed wire.
You have such an interesting life. Oh my goodness.
I swear, when somebody has the first world problems, go spend a week in Haiti.
Yes.
It's
especially, it's so unfortunate. Like now they keep on getting battered and battered. It's terrible.
Yeah. It's as we've seen in Afghanistan, is you can't give that hand out. You have to give them a hand up, and that has to be in their thing. So gratitude. There's patience too. I'm definitely God give me patience. I'm like, what? Yeah, but you think I learned patience from the farming bit. That lesson's long forgotten. So, but patience takes time. When oh God. I once had 3 properties with 6 mortgages in 3 countries, and I was in debt. God knows I never counted it all, but I was in multi-million-dollar debt, and I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I knew I had to do something. And that took a bit of planning, a bit of figuring out how to get out of it. So it's just patience. If you really want something, figure out how to do it. I just heard a great thing is a quote is mediocre actions done consistently is better than brilliance done once. So that perfectionism is really sort of a lack of self-confidence and like not feeling good enough. And it's just like, it's a chapter in my book, is good enough is enough. Yeah.
Yes.
So just don't aim for perfection, aim for progress.
Yes. Wow. Okay. I have to read this. You have to encourage everybody to read this book. You've got so many things here. So you said, be spontaneous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stop finding reasons not to do things.
Just do it. Yeah.
And be grateful. Write 5 grateful things that you're grateful for each day, at least.
For a year. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like you say, it's little habits, right? That really will, and it just, because you need to ingrain it into being grateful for things.
Yes.
And I think
absolutely.
I'm so happy that I'm grateful for like my life, which I've totally started from scratch. And I literally had 0 self-esteem 11 years ago.
Yeah. That is such a incredible journey that you've been on. And we talked about the abuse you went through and how you've come through it. But again, I'll go back to how positive you are. And it seems it's not just an external facade. It seems like really from inside that you do have that positive energy, and that's so evident. And these lessons in your book that you have said. And so the other one was patience and not being perfect, that letting go of that perfectionism. So fantastic. Really great.
Oh,
how is the book done?
it's done okay.
Yeah.
I haven't really, it was a work of love took 6 years it's been in the works for 40 years, basically.
Right.
But it's done okay.
Good.
People got a lot of, funny enough, the retired generation absolutely adores it. So who knows? But my financial planner finally got his copy, and he bought 15 copies for his team. So
right. Yeah, I will ask you, I don't think we can touched on that, but why farming? How did that happen?
I had a green thumb, something I had never done before. And it's literally, I started from scratch, and I love learning. And it was one of the happiest times in my life. I mean, it was still the honeymoon period, but started from scratch and just because I could.
Just did it. Just because you could. That's awesome. Yeah. I think that's the theme of what you just talked about, is just because you could, you did.
I did. Yeah.
And you took the step.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all that. I just enjoyed this conversation so much. And maybe you can tell our audience what you're doing now, where we can find you. We'll have the links to your book in the show notes as well. Yeah. But anything that you'd like to share that you're doing or anything?
Yeah. I mean, I offer free consultations if you're sort of thinking about being an entrepreneur. I have an incredible sales and marketing gut and instinct and experience. And I go, hi, would you like to do this? This is really where I see it. I'm just sort of very instinctive too, of like, this can make you money. Do you want to do it?
Right.
It's all about the money. My motto is to have fun and make money. If you're not having fun, who cares about the money? And the more fun you have, the more money you'll make.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. We'll leave it on that.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that. You can't top that.
What else is there to love? Love, I guess.
Love, of course. That was fantastic. I really enjoyed this conversation. And, I think we can all learn from all your life lessons. And I would encourage everyone to read your book and to seek out Patti if you are thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, or if you need some advice on some sales methods and tips. And lovely. And thank you so much for being here. And we look forward to seeing where you go next. What's your next journey taking you?
I have no idea. Remember that I don't plan. It's a dreaded P word. I don't do it.
Yeah, you don't plan.
Who knows? But thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you so much, Patti.
Thanks.
Take care.
All right.
I'm sure you enjoyed my colorful conversation with Patti Pokorchuk. Her positive spirit, no can-do attitude towards living a life on the edge was both entertaining and inspirational. I also appreciated her vulnerability when discussing a life of abuse and how she came through from that. Here are her key takeaways. Number 1, when we fast forward to 90 or 95 and are sitting on your rocking chair, your regrets at that age are your dreams for today, and it doesn't matter what age. Number 2, if you're not living on the edge a bit, you're not living. If something you do doesn't scare you a bit, then you're not growing. Number 3, once you make a huge life decision, the next one is a lot easier. 4, when your happy outside matches your happy inside, that is true happiness. 5, love yourself first and everything flows. What anyone else thinks of me is none of my business. What I think of me is the number 1. Number 6, I encourage people who have been going through trauma to get professional help. Never give up to get to a place of happiness and peace. That's the most important part. 7, stop finding reasons not to do something and just do it. Don't overanalyze. Be a bit spontaneous because you regret what you don't do. Number 8, write down 5 things that you're grateful for every day for a year. Thank you for choosing to be here and listening to this podcast. I know you could be many places, so I'm grateful to you for that. I am also over the moon excited to share with you that the doors for our signature program, It's My Time Now, How to Rediscover Yourself in Midlife, is open. This is an in-depth course which will take you from confusion to clarity on your life's calling. You can choose between independent learning, which is completely online, group learning, in which you will work through the online modules with a small group of like-minded women led by me, or private learning, where I will be your personal guide through 12 personal coaching sessions. The process which we go through is called the Pyramid of Reinvention and consists of 7 modules and 26 lessons of curated videos, downloadable tools, templates, and resources available for life. I will share my own story of reinvention and will lead you through the exact steps I followed with a practical action plan you can implement right away. Our first group starts the week of October 4th, and we have a special 10% discount for those of you who enroll by midnight on Friday, September 17th. You can find all the details in the show notes below, including a link for how to register for our course as well. I'm so excited to lead you on your own journey of reinvention. As you have heard many stories of reinvention from our weekly podcast guests, I hope this inspires you to take action in your own life moving forward. Contact me if you have any questions at all at kavita@powerpurposeplay.ca. In love and light, till next week.